What's up, everybody? I am Space Tomato. This is our podcast, The Launch Sequence, and this is Draazen, my co-host. And today we've got a lot to talk about. We are going to get started with some Star Citizen discussion as always, but it's E3 week, so there's a lot to go over. Why don't we just jump right into it, though? Get us started off on Star Citizen. What's going on? What are we thinking? How are things going?
Absolutely, yeah. We're starting off this week with Alien Week. Well, technically last week. With Alien Week, we got a new ship announced, a new alien cargo ship called the Raylan. And other than that, the event for me has, for the most part, flew under the radar. I'm not into alien ships, so I've always been passively monitoring Alien Week in years past. But I do know for a lot of people who are really interested in different Xeno ship designs as well as lore, things like that getting built out, the Alien Week offers a lot for people who are really into that.
I am right there with you, honestly. I've never been huge on alien ships. I mean, I think they're really cool and I love the styling of a lot of them, but as far as buying them for myself or wanting to even earn them for myself, the only reason I've ever wanted one was because I thought maybe I'd be able to get in with the aliens a bit more. So Alien Week's not super interesting to me, but I did think the ship was cool. A new cargo ship is cool, especially one of that size, and it's rather unique. It's got some interesting features, floating elevators, and a pretty unique design in that the elevators move through the whole ship kind of diagonally. And it's very large. It looks smaller actually in the pictures than it is, but it's really big. It's pretty unique in its styling, and it's the first ship I feel like came out of Star Citizen that I was like, this is something that I don't think could fit in another fiction, at least not one that I know of. You know, you look at, say, well, let's just take a recent one, for example, the Scorpius. I'm sure you'll have plenty of people saying that looks like it could fit in Star Wars. But the Raylan, whatever it's called, it really does have a pretty unique look to it, in my opinion. But overall, like you said, just a quiet week. We just had Invictus week, right? So things should be hyped, but you just haven't really felt it.
No, I think, I feel like if you were to ask me what the theme of this past month and the couple months ahead, and maybe even just the middle part of 2021 for Star Citizen, if I had one title, I would say it's the year of cargo. We're seeing the Raylan getting announced, which was surprising. We're going to be getting the Taurus, most definitely, and 314, which is the cargo variant of the Constellation series.
Yeah.
And we're also getting updates, just cargo overall as a gameplay loop. So I really feel like right now it's the year of cargo, which has been kind of interesting. It's definitely a gameplay loop that has had lots of issues in the past, and even currently with commodity trading not exactly working how it's supposed to, not being as lucrative compared to other gameplay loops. So it's just in a really weird place right now, but we're getting ships to really back up that gameplay loop. So I think people are pretty excited, I would say, me personally, for the Taurus. But it's been strange as far as the energy in Star Citizen. I feel like the community might be slipping into how it was last year, with a lot of negativity starting to pour in.
Not that that's a bad thing. It's just the way people feel. You said that this year feels like the year of cargo. I also agree, but then I look at the fact that they haven't started the cargo refactor. I feel like we're not going to get that this year, and that's honestly very disappointing when it does feel like, the Constellation Taurus, the Starlifter, the whole series, all this stuff is getting worked on. And I guess maybe that's because they're working on the ships before they bring in the features, so that when the feature comes in, we have the ships to use it for. But I also would have just liked to see the cargo refactor happening at the same time. So that's kind of sad. And the interesting thing, actually, so this is completely off topic. Well, it's Star Citizen, but I noticed when I was looking over I was trying to get different ideas for some videos. This is one that I'm probably going to do coming up here shortly, but I've looked in the history of the updates in Star Citizen. We haven't missed a single update since 3.0 all the way back in 2018. We haven't missed a single update without getting some sort of weapon, whether that be FPS, a ship weapon, a weapon that comes with a ship or a vehicle. There has never not been a weapon included until this year. And as of this year, there is not a single weapon on the roadmap. So I thought that was interesting, and I'm gonna do some more research about it. I'm gonna see if I can maybe ask somebody at CIG about it, see what's going on there. I'm guessing the idea is that they have enough weapons, but they don't feel they're implemented into the game enough. They don't feel like they're detailed enough to be that different. So instead of continuing to make more weapons, they are going to start to develop the systems that differentiate them more. That's my main theory, and I think that stands out from the ship problem, which is that they keep making ships. That's because they have to sell ships. The weapons don't make them money, so I think they're stopping the weapons for now to kind of go back and be like, what can we do to make these feel more significant?
I think as far as weapons go, we do know one thing that they are having to work on, which sounds like they might be having some trouble with, which is for the Ares, both the Inferno and the Ion, which will have bespoke size 7s.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. That is a weapon that they are having development on. I believe they're kind of behind on, maybe having some issues. We don't really know. That is one, but it's so specific because it's just for that ship.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but
and then the mines, if you can technically consider that weapons or bombs
which
and
ones?
mines.
Oh yeah,
The
with
bombs
the
and mines.
A2.
With the A2, yep. If you can consider that a weapon, that might, I feel like those are two maybe out in left field, might be kind of considered weapons.
They do count. They do. Because when I made that statement about not missing a patch, there was one patch where we didn't have any standalone FPS or ship weapons, and that was when we got the Prowler. We got a weapon with the Prowler. So if I'm going to count that, then we count the Ares. That's a good point. But I do feel that, like you were saying, there is a little bit of discontent in the community right now. Things are a little up in the air. I think we're at this sort of turning point with the game, and that a lot of people, even content creators I'm seeing saying like, this is just about it. Like at this point, it really needs to pick up. And I know I put out a video earlier this year that it is going to pick up, but only CIG can make that happen. I'm really hoping they do, because there's a lot more to have, like, I mean, we talk about the most simple things, doing the most simple things in game, and it would be a huge bummer if all of that stuff was still so far away.
Absolutely. They lay down the path for us at the start of the year, at technically the end of the prior year.
Yeah.
And much like your video that you put out, what to expect from Star Citizen 2021, they lay out that road for us. But many potholes and detours and things like that make the road not so smooth as they paint the picture to be, I guess, so to speak. So we're here at the middle of the road. So something's gotta happen, that's for sure. So hopefully it's ends up being a nice back half to the year. With 314, with Casino Threat, Ninetales Lockdown, things like that, getting Orison, Crusader, that'll be good. Hospitals, possibly some healing stuff. They just need to start delivering.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to paint a bad picture here. There are some very important things that are about to be finished. iCache is actively being implemented into the game. The Gen 12 renderer is just about done. That's starting to be implemented in the game. Server meshing is being worked on. There are important back-end things that are going into the game that are going to change stuff. We're getting a lighting rework. So that's why it's not necessarily oh crap, things are bad. It's more of a things are at a tipping point. We'll see what happens. But
absolutely,
that's enough about Star Citizen, because we do Star Citizen all the time. This week is about E3. So let's talk about E3. First of all, I want to, and before we get super deep into this, I should let everybody know who's listening or watching, this is going to be a two-parter. There is a lot to talk about with all the games that have come out. We're going to go through a lot right now. So if you are listening, make sure to check out the second part as well. There's going to be some very interesting games in discussion in that, including Halo Infinite, talking about some other events like Sony's event coming up. So just make sure to check that out as well. But let's go ahead and get into it. E3 was skipped last year.
Mhm.
That was, I think, the first year I ever didn't watch E3. I think E3's been a thing ever since I started back in like 2002 or 2003 or something, and it was skipped last year. Before that, Sony didn't go, and I believe another pretty big company didn't go. And the general trend since the early 2010s has been that E3 is dying, or it's not necessary anymore. We don't need it. And I think that's a I can't say it, but I think that's crap. I don't believe that. I think E3 isn't going anywhere, at least not for the next few years. I think that people forget E3 isn't just about them. It's also
Mhm.
about the actual companies that are there. I say this a lot to people, but I mean, you know this. You work in an industry that requires a lot of people working together and very, very big, large parties and companies that do things that need to meet up and recruit and all that kind of stuff. So I'm guessing
Mhm.
in your industry, there are conventions. And there are some people who go to those conventions because they love what it's about. There are some people who go to those conventions because they have to. It's their job, it's where their
Mhm.
company is. Those people don't want E3 to go. Those people survive on E3. E3 is
Mhm.
a recruiting site. It is a place where job interviews are done, where people go down the street to get an interview with somebody from a different country because otherwise that's impossible to do. It's not just about what's happening on the show floor. It's about the idea that there is this whole event that needs to happen. And I think people
Absolutely,
forget that
it's
that's part of it.
absolutely it's a catalyst to get people together, to meet, to have collaborations, to get talks going.
Yeah.
That's the same with any kind of, you know, convention, and that's with any industry, not just gaming itself, but
Yeah.
my industry as well. It's great, just a great time to meet people. You might see them once every year. To In my industry, we have a massive global convention that's held in Florida
Hmm.
every 3 years. And that's massive. You need to be that. Your company needs to have at least a couple people either at a booth or just a presence there, because companies need to stay at the curve or ahead of the curve. You
Yeah.
can't fall behind, especially
Exactly.
with industries that change so much, especially like gaming. The issue that I feel like E3 has is that it got so popularized and commercialized when E3 started. And I'm sure you remember, it was always a super secret backdoor kind of thing where, like, oh, you have to be an executive of a company to get in. And
Yeah.
they only talk about new technology that's coming out. It all started with that, with hardware and some software as well.
Hmm.
That was how E3 started, and people need to remember why E3 exists in the first place, and that we're just being allowed to see E3 because it makes financial sense for them to have the consumers involved. But this was never started as a consumer oriented event. It was always a industry specific insider kind of event, which then opened up. They realized, hey, we can market this pretty well and have people interested
Yeah.
and get more money and funding this way. But it was never intended to be this when they started it. But it's grown since then, of course.
Yeah. And I don't know if Comic-Con was the same was had the same idea, but that is also another convention that has just blown up in popularity and become something that is just generally an event for normal people as opposed to, the very, very dedicated fans. But
Absolutely.
that's one part of the conversation. There's a lot that goes into the conversation around E3. I certainly don't think it's dead. I think this year was one of the best years I've ever seen. And I guess we should probably talk about that, huh? Some of the
Yeah,
goods.
and before that, it is even companies that said that they weren't going or that are choosing to do their own events at some point in the year,
Hmm.
whether they've already had it or it will be coming.
Yeah.
They still showed some of their games and some things at E3 anyway.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a half in, half out kind of, right? We still saw Battlefield. We're going to be seeing more of it during, EA Play. But they still showed a video, so it's not
Hmm.
like they're completely removing themselves. They still recognize it as a great platform to reach hundreds of thousands, millions of gamers out there who are tuning into this. People can't just forgo a presence at E3. Doesn't make sense yet. Maybe that might change in the future, but again, most companies still showed a little something
Hmm.
at E3, I would say.
Yeah. And sucking me back into the subject, but um that's actually a really good point. E3 is about the general time. It doesn't even have to be an event. Like E3 as a physical event could die. That
Mhm.
would suck, but it could die. E3 as a week of the year in which everything gets announced and shown off, I don't know if that'll ever go away. You know,
Hmm.
it's like Black Friday, right? Black Friday is the
Yeah.
day. That's the day that everybody wants to go shopping, but it's not like there aren't other sales all week besides that. So,
No, it's like having Christmas. You can't have Christmas on any other day or week or Thanksgiving. I feel like the gaming industry always needs to have a week of the year where everybody comes together to showcase this. Having events separately, I mean, yeah, it'll attract your core group of people who are really, wanting to check out a game or your company, but not everybody's going to mark their calendar and set aside time for odd days out of the year to attend this, right?
yeah.
You want one big event where everybody can set aside, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 days to just consume as much information as possible. And E3's provided that. I'm kind of skeptical about how this is going to play out with other companies doing their own shows wholeheartedly. I still feel like they need to at least maintain a semi decent presence at E3 because that's where they know they're going to get to hit a lot of audiences and attract people who may not be aware of them or kind of are on the fence or don't keep up to date. They can loop them in and possibly get some crossover to their events that happen during the year as well.
Hmm. Yeah. All I know is that I hated last year. I don't want to do it again like last year. So,
Absolutely.
but the first thing, so E3 is an event, but let's be honest, both of us here are Xbox fans. We always have been. I've had all the consoles. I've played Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft my entire life. I started PC gaming rather recently, but that's also kind of Microsoft. So going from three consoles to PC gaming, obviously the clear connection between those two is Microsoft. Xbox Live being a very easy social platform where I can, have cross progression between games, have my friends on computer and console. It's natural. You also love Xbox. So naturally, we're going to start with the Xbox conference,
Oh, yeah.
which started with Starfield, the big guy. Now, I've got a lot to say about this. We both know. Would you like to get in anything before I start ranting and losing my mind?
No, no, I want to hear it. Please.
Okay, so for those who don't know, I did a video on my other channel actually about this a couple weeks ago. But Starfield is a new space-based RPG from Bethesda. There's a lot to consider there. I think first, the biggest surprise, or the biggest thing about that statement to me is the fact that Bethesda is doing a space-based game. Partially because none of their games have ever been in space, but partially because they haven't done a new IP in over 2 decades. Almost as long as I've been alive, they have not introduced a new game to their lineup. And this is the first time. This is reportedly, this is Todd Howard's thing. He grew up looking at NASA, wondering what it was like, wondering what they were going to do, wondering what was out there in space. And now they are at this point where they finally realize there's the technology they need, there is the interest they need, there is the time and the money they need to make this epic space game that he's calling NASA Punk. It has a retro future look to it. For those of you who play Star Citizen, imagine a Drake ship. Basically, it's everything is physical switches and buttons, and it's a little crunchy and I don't know. It just feels like old. It feels like 80s future, not like what we think of as a future now, but what they did. And it's going to be big. I think they're going to procedurally generate planets. I don't think it's going to be anything like Star Citizen, Elite Dangerous, or No Man's Sky. Obviously they have to hit a more broader interest group than that, but I do think it's going to be bigger than something like Mass Effect. I think we're going to have multiple systems to explore. We've had alien races that will be confirmed in this game. Now, we don't know if we'll be able to interact with them, if we'll be able to team up with them, what we'll be able to do with them, but they have confirmed that alien races are in the game, which adds more interest. There are different organizations in the game. You work for a company called Constellation, who's all about exploration, but there are other organizations and factions that, some are pirates, some are based on controlling colonies, and you can learn, join, and I don't know, I probably not lead, but be a part of these groups, much like you could in Skyrim, much like you could in Fallout. much like you could in Oblivion. These are all trademarks of Bethesda. It's why they make such enjoyable games. However, they are really shooting to polish this one off and make it a bigger deal. And honestly, with the way that they've been advertising it, with the way that Microsoft has been putting it out in front of all their other games in marketing, in placement, even if you look at the end of their conference, the last thing they show is Starfield. I think Microsoft might actually be banking on this series to be one of their main ones going forward. And I think that could be a massive deal because we could possibly be looking at, I wouldn't say move over Halo, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're starting to realize, okay, we've got a new generation, we need to create a new iconic game to push us forward. Now, the character customization will be there, so we'll all be able to make our own characters, but there is a possibility there will be a default face, and that will be the new face in front of the Xbox brand. Don't know. It's not necessarily a yes. It's not even probable, but it is possible. But yeah, I didn't go through everything that I like about this game. I've got a video coming out later this week, but I could talk about this game for an hour. I'm excited for it. I don't want to overhype it because we don't actually know that much yet, but from what we've seen and from the amount of sci-fi RPGs we've gotten in the last decade, I'm willing to be a little bit more excited about this. So that's my spiel.
Absolutely. Yeah, from reading things before E3 even, they said their intent is to give it like a space in the 40s and 50s kind of feel of, we're just kind of getting our space legs, so to speak.
Hmm.
So it's very dangerous. It's very, calculated things like that. He was saying, kind of the feeling they want to put on people. And I think you see that with the starship that we saw, a very Drake kind of style, maybe just getting into space kind of vibe I'm feeling from it. It seems really cool. I'm very interested, and you, of course, sent me the article about the memo. So I feel like we're getting an introduction to some, factions, some
Hmm.
maybe not so great players, at least on the surface.
Hmm.
So sounds pretty interesting. I feel like they've got something going on here. I'm excited.
Yeah.
A RPG, a space RPG sounds super fun. Might be a game that I'll get into. I know I spent many, many hours in Skyrim with mods, so I hope they will add, modability to the game, so the modding community can really take off with it at some point. But of course, very, very, very far in the future. First, the
Yeah.
game's got to come out.
Yeah. And that was a good. You mentioned that memo and the factions and stuff. There is a whole wiki they have on this game already on their website. It's internal right now, but the fact that they're putting together that wiki, and I think, oh gosh, I don't remember what they said, but they put out a number. It's pretty big already. So one of the most important things for me, and I know an important thing for a lot of other people, is convincing real interesting lore to back up everything you're doing. The factions, who you are, what you're doing, why you're there, where you are. All those things I feel need to have a reason. And a company that acknowledges that, I have more trust in. That's something that CIG says about Star Citizen a lot. They want everything to be connected and make sense. That's part of what I love about it. And I think that kind of approach is becoming more and more popular in games. And I'm really excited to see that in something as big as Starfield, if they can really, pull it off in that way, and that the lore really drives the game forward. But the conference really just took off from there, right? Starfield was just the first thing they showed, which I was impressed by. I was like, Starfield's a big game. They're going to show that later in the game. First thing they showed,
Mhm.
and they did not slow down. We got the Sea of Thieves event coming up next, and I think you've played more Sea of Thieves than I have, but they're bringing in Captain Jack Sparrow, and it's a Pirates of the Caribbean partnership for it looks like a lot of fun. What did you think of that?
So I just got into Sea of Thieves probably 2, 3 months ago. My
Hmm.
friends decided to pick it up, so I started playing it, started sailing with them. Super fun. I have some concerns about the game just because I don't know, maybe it's just personal stuff about it. It's not a game that I could play every day. You don't
Hmm.
really have end goals to work towards exactly. Um, you can earn, customize things on your characters, things like that. A lot of it's very monetized. If you
Mm.
want to get pet companions in the game, you have to buy it. You can earn them, but it takes super freaking long to earn a lot of that stuff that you can actually have to pay for. So I can see the monetization feature of it. But
Yeah.
the great thing is that they keep putting out these seasons, and every single season is free. So they're
Yeah.
continually updating it. So there's always something to come back and check on. And I feel like this is going to be really fun. I've been doing a lot of pirate or skeleton forts with my friends. But we just kind of fall in and out of love with the game. I guess there's always some things to do. It's a lot like Star Citizen in some ways. You always have to PvP. There's no opt-in, opt-out PvP. You're always going to have that factor.
Well,
Now
that's
you can sail
something.
for certain factions where you can get out of PvP sometime, but in most cases you're going to be attacked by players, and at any point in time you have to realize that that's kind of the reality of that game, which I feels like mirrors a lot of what we'll see in Star Citizen, you know?
That's something that people used to say is that Star Citizen, Sea of Thieves is a very good game to show kind of what Star Citizen is going for in the sense of the multi-crew aspect. Everybody has their job. You're just you're one platform in the middle of a moving ocean. So it is. I've heard that comparison made a lot, and from what I've seen, the game looks fun. I remember playing it in alpha. Never really got that into it, but I thought it was a really interesting concept, and the fact that they're doing such a big partnership with Disney and it's free is very cool. So I will probably check that out at some point. I get CFD through Game Pass, so it sounds like one I'll stop by.
Absolutely.
So after Sea of Thieves, we got I believe we got a quick trailer for is a concept trailer for a game called Contraband. And the funny thing about this, I remember we were watching this and I kind of missed the first, I think, 5 seconds maybe of the trailer, but there's like a small post-it. I went and watched it again. There's like a small post-it that says from the creators of Just Cause 4.
Hmm.
And at the end of the trailer, I remember saying, "Oh, there's a this looks like Just Cause." And then I think may have been you that was like, "Yeah, it's made by the same people."
Hmm.
But
Absolutely, yeah. It's going to be an upcoming co-op, open world co-op game. It's a smuggler's paradise set in some fictional world of 1970s Bayonne. Um, yeah, they're labeling it as the most ambitious and spectacular game to date.
yeah,
Whatever that's.
I it feels like it's far away. I really wish we had
Hmm.
gotten just a little bit more from the trailer, an idea of the setting, an idea of what our mission or goal, what we're doing is. Maybe there it wasn't there, maybe I should watch it again, but it was a very, very basic trailer. So I think that game is still a ways away.
Gave me a lot of Starfield vibes of it's a game, they're working on it, here's some stuff of it. Starfield actually gave us a little more info than even Contraband did, but I
Yeah.
felt like the start of the conference kicked off a lot of, it's probably sometime next year, maybe an asterisk Seamward E3 next year for a release date kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So,
E3 next year. That's actually we'll get into that conversation in part 2. But that's going to be oh boy. So after that, we got a couple of the games. Yakuza, probably one of the least interesting games to both of us. Neither of us play it, but it is coming to Game Pass, so people who are into that series can play every single Yakuza from, I believe it's Yakuza 0 to something like the Dragon or something like that. I can't remember the exact names, but that's that's good for them. I'm happy to see Game Pass continuing to bring in popular games that people love, even if I don't like them. But we moved on then from there to Stalker 2. Now, I've watched a little bit of the first Stalker. I want to go and play it at some point, but I've watched, I know kind of what it's about. And so when I saw the original teaser trailer, I think it was last year, a couple years ago, I think last year, I was super excited. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be cool. But over the course of the year, I kept seeing people being like, I don't know if it's going to be like the first one, you know? I don't know if it's going to be spiritual. It's going to be true to the story. But the trailer they showed us, while not exactly real time gameplay, it was very cool. It's a let's see. So this is a survival shooter that is based in an area that is inhabited by these weird anomalies that can do a lot of damage to people in the world. And you're searching for these anomalies. You're also trying to avoid the bad ones and the ones that can hurt you. And it feels very much like Metro. And I know this sort of inspired Metro, but Metro Exodus I think is the closest you can find to a game like this, and this just looks like it
Mhm.
takes it one step higher. Have you ever played Stalker?
No, I haven't. But with that being said, watching the release video of Stalker 2, there's a lot of games that are starting to come up with the whole Russia, Ukraine, Chernobyl, especially these anomalies that you were talking about. A lot of it centered around the Chernobyl disaster and wanting to get to the basement. The
Mhm.
basement, the reference to the where the rest of the uranium fuel had leaked into the basement of. So a lot of that kind of tied into it. We also saw Chernobylite, which I just feel like there's a lot of these survival horror kind of games that are centered around this massive disaster, which still unfortunately plagues us today.
Yeah.
So while it seemed interesting, I just feel like that's kind of one of the grabs of the video game industry right now, is this kind of post-apocalyptic Chernobyl, Russia, Ukraine
Hey
of
man,
game. So
Stalker was the first one to do it.
absolutely, absolutely. So they're continuing that, which I think's cool. Doesn't seem like a game for me, but if you're really into it, sounds like something you'll really like. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
I think it. Oof. They have some pretty interesting game mechanics. So I'm excited to see how they expand that with a much larger budget. I'm assuming there's a much larger budget there.
Oh yeah,
Speaking of large budgets, though, we got Battlefield after that, and I feel like this is going to be your. You're going to want to take this one, yeah? You got some
yeah.
things to say?
Oh man, yeah. Now it's time for the negative nanny. So Battlefield 2042. Backstory for me: I started off playing Battlefield 2 and Battlefield Bad Company. I played Battlefield Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, Hardline, all of
You
those
played
games.
Hardline?
I did play Hardline. I did not like
I
Hardline.
I tried it. I think once. I just no.
It just doesn't. It didn't make sense.
Yeah.
The Battlefield games that I have not played were the most recent ones, which was Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5. I've seriously got to figure out their number here, man. Didn't play those. I'm glad I didn't. But now we're here. Battlefield 2042, a Battlefield game that will not feature a campaign in a Battlefield series that has so far up till now had a campaign.
Well,
Weird.
since the third game,
Well,
the first two didn't have one.
since the first two didn't have one,
Yeah.
no. Those are kind of set apart. Again, it's really weird how they take this whole Battlefield franchise, because they have changed so much. They didn't have a campaign, then they had one for 2 and 3, and continuing with Hardline and almost every single game after,
Yeah.
they've had these massive story-driven campaigns with really intriguing and deep characters, and now all of a sudden they're not. So they've really been changing paths with this, so it won't feel the same. I feel like its competitors, Halo and Call of Duty, still have awesome campaigns. So why are they doing this? The price for this multiplayer only game will be going as much, and is currently going as much, as full games that have single player campaigns and multiplayer. I believe it starts at $60, goes up to 70 and up. What I don't understand is why they're making people pay for a multiplayer only game when its competitors have been doubling down on releasing games with a campaign and a free multiplayer experience. That makes no sense to me. What do you think?
I mean, I think they're hoping their name carries some of that. I also think that they probably sat down multiple times and were like, what are we best at? What do people buy our games for?
Mm-hmm.
Where should we invest? They were like, okay, we got $20 million of extra funding for this one. Where do we invest that? Do we make a absolute kick-ass multiplayer, or do we put that into the single player that's going to be so-so? Because they had campaigns, and I would say Bad Company 1 and 2 and Battlefield 3, in my opinion, were the best.
Mm-hmm.
I barely played Battlefield 1's campaign. I didn't even touch Battlefield 5's, but I didn't really appreciate the style of it. I just the war, modern war campaigns or modern war stories, are just kind of not too interesting to me because they're so very grounded in nonfiction.
Mhm.
I don't know, and I guess I kind of can see why they would cut the campaign because they know that while they do make campaigns, a lot of people, the majority of people probably play for the multiplayer, and a lot of people probably will be angry about missing a campaign but not actually avoid the game. And yeah, I think they just decided that they weren't good enough at the campaign to do it. They wanted to double down on the multiplayer and make sure they won back all the people that they lost with just a really, really good package of PvP.
The issue that I have is that they're making people pay full price for a
Yeah,
multiplayer
that
game,
is a
a
problem.
game that they had this whatever additional funding you mentioned,
Hmm.
all three-ish of their studios are all focused on this, and they're making people pay $60 to $70 for a multiplayer only game, which
Hmm.
as of right now we've only heard about one map. And I get it, okay, it's big. I know I'm gonna get people are gonna hate me for this. It's one map, it's big, okay, whatever. Even with big maps, those get old after you play, maybe 5 to 10, you know, versions of the game because you spawn in so many different places. But guess what? There's only so many places you can spawn. Middle areas you're going to fight in, but never spawn in. So, I just feel like there's a lot of issues there. The multiplayer will have seasons that you will need to pay for to unlock specialists that will probably go from $20 to $30 range. So, on top of playing for this multiplayer only game that I feel like should be $30 to $40, you're paying 60 to 70 full price. You will now need to buy season passes to get additional specialists, or you may just risk not being up to snuff with the meta where these specialists come into play. And I'll talk about that real quick too. So the game is still
Real
going to
quick.
have their.
Somebody
Mhm.
said I saw somebody make an excuse for specialists on the internet, and I wanted to confirm this with somebody who has actually been paying attention. They said specialists, and I quote, specialists are just classes. They just rebranded them to be something different.
No. So the game will still have classes.
Hmm.
The recon, support, assault, right? They're more broad spectrum now. They share a lot of similarities in common. So within each class, you will have specialists that fall into the classes, like recon or support.
Hmm.
But they will all have, each specialist has unique abilities that are only for these specific specialists.
Right.
Now, all of these abilities will still fall under some sort of recon style gameplay, um, which kind of muddies the water. They also talked about how you may be recon, but that doesn't mean you're going to have a sniper. You can have a LMG, you can have an SMG, you can have a shotgun, all depending on how your gameplay is going to go on that,
Hmm.
which I think's good.
Yeah, I see
You can
nothing wrong with
change your
that.
weapon and attachments on the fly. The previous Battlefields really should have had this feature. So I feel like there's a lot of, they're kind of going away from the whole class thing and more just ability based, character based stuff, which is again vastly different from Battlefields previously, where you had your generic class with loadouts and you had to fall within a certain line.
Hmm.
I feel like they're changing a lot from not campaign, not having these very aligned classes to just kind of, it's an experiment. I'll say that.
I'll s- I'll say this: the the idea of getting rid of classes, I think, wouldn't be such a hard hit if they make sure to not necessarily getting rid of classes, but having them not be as big a deal wouldn't be such a hard hit if they just said, okay, if you're, let's say, a recon class, um, then you might naturally have better stamina, or you can hold your breath longer when you shoot a sniper rifle, or your radar when you set down a radar ping, it goes out a little bit further. Like, don't lock features and weapons behind the class, but make sure that each class is better with certain things, so that you still have a reason to choose your class because that's what you specialize at. I don't want them to get rid of the squad-based gameplay. That's what makes Battlefield Battlefield. So that is a little concerning that
Mhm.
you said that.
And that's the issue I have with specialists. I feel like they're turning this from a squad-based gameplay, which Battlefield has always been at its core,
Yeah,
and is making a lot of individualists come to the game, like people
mm,
from Call of Duty, which
that's
is
what they
not a
need.
bad
It's what they
thing. It's
want.
what they need.
Yeah.
But again, if you're going away from the squad-based gameplay, I mean, you've already given up the campaign. You've already given up the, more streamlined classes and you've broadened it to these specialists. Well, you still need to give something to your core, which is having squad-based gameplay. Somebody may just choose a specialist and decide, you know what? Fuck this team. I'm going to go off and do my own thing, get as many kills as I can, not play objectives, and just level up everything that I want to and play the game how I want to.
Yeah.
That is where you're going to see a community that is not pleased, a core community of Battlefield that's not pleased. That is what I'm very, very worried about. For me, overall, verdict is still out for me on this one. I will not be pre-ordering. Probably only grab it once it goes on sale, if I even do get it. I'm more excited for Halo because I feel like that's calling to me way more than Battlefield
Oh God,
is.
yeah.
So,
And we will get to that, folks. Believe it. We got
Mhm.
Part 2 is going to be like half Halo, but I completely agree with you. And honestly, the problem that you were talking about is something we already see with the current system of Battlefield. People don't play the objectives. They don't play as the role that they're supposed to. They don't talk to their squad. They don't help their squad. They don't follow orders all the time. Those are things that they put into the game. Yes, optionally, but also as a way to play the game efficiently. If you play on a team with like functioning squads, you will almost never lose because the other team's just going to be a bunch of spazzes running around separately. And
if
from
you
what you're
want a
saying,
good game that shows what Battlefield should do, play Squad. Because Squad is, it may be too far on the spectrum of what maybe Battlefield doesn't need to be. But if you do not communicate to your squads and the other squads, you will lose the game so bad. The game will be so unpleasant. Now, Battlefield was never like that, but it needs to be somewhere in that area of, if you don't have squad communication, your gameplay experience as a single player is not going to be fun unless you work together with your squad and make sure communication's happening and the overall team is coordinated in some fashion. And that's maybe why I've been playing squad a lot more now, because I crave that squad experience of needing to rely on my teammates in order to get things done.
and that squad gameplay or that communication doesn't even need to be over a microphone. A lot of people don't play with mics. They have all of the orders and messages that you would need to send to a teammate right there in the game. You just quick action, pick it, and send it over. So yeah, they might be moving in the wrong direction in that aspect, which is a bummer. I hope they're not, but I'll keep my eye on this one. You said you're not pre-ordering. I'm definitely not pre-ordering. I'll pick this up if it comes to Game Pass. I will look for it if it's on sale, but I still think it's too early for me to say whether or not I'm going to buy it day one. But it's interesting to me. It's on my radar. Something that's much less exciting, but equally as interesting to me, to be honest, is 12 minutes. And this is a game that we have been hearing about for years. And it all takes place, from what I've seen, in one room. It's all about a 12-minute period of time that keeps replaying over and over. And it's a pretty high production project for being a game that looks fairly small. It's starring Willem Dafoe and who else is in it? I can't remember. Have you heard about this game?
I saw the gameplay reveal and I think I got up and got coffee or water. Did seem like something interesting to me.
Willem Dafoe, Daisy Ridley, and James McAvoy, which is that's a huge cast, and it's essentially you're running through a night with your wife, and your wife ends up getting, I think, killed, and then you get arrested or something like that, and you have to go through these 12 minutes over and over and over again to try and find the clues around this room that help you figure out what happened and why it's happening. And it just, I love that. I freaking love that. The idea of playing the same sequence over and over to do something is such a nice approach to a game, because you can do anything you want with games. Yeah, people generally will create a game that goes chronologically from beginning to end, but you'll get games that have flashbacks, that have you jumping through time, that have you going backwards in time. This one simply has you doing the same time over and over. It's just another approach, but I think it's very creative, and I can't wait to play the game. But you literally know nothing about it, huh?
I saw the release video. This doesn't seem like something that really doesn't
Not
seem like
enough
something
pew pew.
I'd be interested in. Not enough pew pew. Nope.
And I think you can say the same for Psychonauts 2, which is coming out soon. That was also shown. I think it's coming out later this year. And that's a game that you said, you don't like platforming type adventure games very much. And I've personally have never been into the series. I played Oddworld. I think that was pretty close to that type of game, but it's just never been something that's interested me all that much. Fallout 76, I believe, saw a what was it, a DLC? A new chapter or something, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah, a new expansion. Yes.
Yeah. It was they've been releasing them here and there. I've seen people saying that Fallout 76 has been getting better. Obviously, a lot of people still look at it with the reputation it had a few years ago, something that we are
Mhm,
definitely not clueless to. Star Citizen is
mhm.
oftentimes respected based on its reputation from years ago. And it's been improving apparently. I don't know if it's fast enough. I don't know if it's enough quantity of content, but I've seen there's a player base that looks for it. They're still bringing out content for it, so good for them. I hope they continue to push it towards where it was supposed to be, instead of that absolute train wreck in at launch. Elder Scrolls
Yeah.
Online is a similar game in that it's kind of fantasy and it's online and
Mhm,
it's an MMO kind of. I've never played it though. I just want
mhm.
another Elder Scrolls offline. You've played online though, right? And you didn't like it.
I have. I played it quite a bit. I want to say in the time frame of 2017 to 2018 ish.
Mhm.
And I haven't really touched it since I want to say 2019. I might have checked into it once that year. I played it quite a bit. I have a character that I believe's max level. It's like CP 170 or something like that, which is like their max level plus plus or whatever.
Ooh.
I played it quite a bit. The issue that I had with it was every every 4 to 6 months they drop another expansion, whether it's like 15, 20, $30 that adds four new dungeons and another quest line and another little portion of Tamriel, because essentially this whole time this game's been out, they've been adding new portions of Tamriel, which is the continent that
Okay, that's
Skyrim
cool.
is based on.
Wait,
So they added.
do you get to
Mhm.
go to Cyrodiil?
Yes, actually, Cyrodiil is massive. It's a massive battlefield where you can put
Battlefield.
like siege engines and yeah, it's like a huge battlefield of you're fighting in Cyrodiil, where the White Gold Tower was.
Mm-hmm.
And you essentially have all these castles that you can capture, build siege engines, repair, blow down castle walls, invade them. It's huge.
That
But
actually
yes, you
sounds
do
kind of
get to
cool.
go to Cyrodiil. Actually, Cyrodiil and ESO is technically a PvP zone, so you don't really want to go there unless you're
Okay.
looking for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole White Gold Tower Concordat, all of that is just very into it. But anyway, it's as they've progressed, they continue adding portions and portions to Tamriel for
Mm-hmm.
people to go explore. The issue is, of course, they have to monetize that in some way. Well, they release these bigger expansions, which is one that we saw announced, but they also have mini DLCs, and these are kind of deceptive because every year you'll need to pay about $30 to play this new expansion. On top of that, you need to pay between 15 to potentially up to $30 to get 4 to 6 new dungeons and a little extra quest lines. The problem is that if you don't get every single expansion that they put out and every single mini DLC, you'll kind of get left behind, as far as gear and the meta and things like that to really
Mm.
have enjoyable gameplay. You really have to buy into all of that, which ends up costing quite a bit. I believe the last time I checked, if you want to get every expansion, it was like $600-700, I want to say, to get everything. And they've run discounts and sales and all that. But if you've been buying it since the game has come out to play it new as soon as it releases, it's like $600, $700, $800, which is pretty expensive.
Yeah.
It is a great option. The game's a great option if you don't like WoW, love the Elder Scrolls / Skyrim universe, and you want to play an MMORPG. If you're looking for an awesome MMORPG that is not WoW, then this is definitely a great option. It's a fun game. You need to play it with friends. It's not fun to play solo, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a lot of the grindy, same kind of stuff as WoW. You need to sim your gear. You have the best stuff, but that's my rant about it.
Well, the whole idea of $30 a year got me really thinking about how much is reasonable. If a game is pumping out a lot of content per year, what would you say is reasonable to pay to a studio per year to get all the content? This is assuming that they're not doing, oh, if you buy this content, you have a big advantage over everybody
I'd say
else.
30 to 45 a year, I would say is pretty consistent. I would say that's fine. And
Okay.
if it was just that, it wouldn't be a problem. The issue is they put out 3 to 6 mini DLCs that are 10 to 15 each, and
I
add some
see.
cosmetics and some gear. And some of those you kind of have to end up picking up, because if you don't, you're not going to get certain gear pieces that you need to do raids or PvP. And that's where they get you. It's not really on these big expansions. The smaller ones that you push out to you is not mandatory and just adds some extra content, but are deceptive because they're almost as important as these massive expansions themselves in some cases.
Is the game free or no? Full price
I
or
believe the base game's free to play now.
okay?
The issue is that only gets you so far,
Yeah.
and you're going to get very tired of the base game, and you're going to be locked out of content pretty quickly. You can probably play it for probably a week or two
Well,
before you start really.
I ask because I know that's going to come up in our conversation later with Halo.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, but let's move on from Elder Scrolls because to be honest, it's not Elder Scrolls offline. It's online, and I want offline. But we got the next game was a Party Animals. This is a game that I feel was made for streaming. It feels a lot like what you would see from something like Among Us. It's got that sort of like party game style where, yeah, you're playing in an arena with other people, but your camera isn't focused on you, it's focused on everybody. So if somebody is watching one person play, they get to see all people play. I see that and I'm like, okay, they see what's selling, they see what's working. And a lot of games, I think it's pretty easy to find a supporting argument on this at this point, but a lot of games are being built specifically to market to streamers and to streaming. This is one I felt like was. It looks like a fun game. It looks like a cute little brawler. It looks like it's going to be funny and a good time. Generally more popular with younger people, but that was just another random game that they kind of threw in there. It reminded me of, I think it was Sony's conference at some point. I think it was last year, and they introduced Bug Snacks, I think was the name of the game. And I was just like, what? But I think that game had a little more under the surface than what they advertised. But yeah, this was just a random party game. Not really that interesting. I'm guessing you have nothing to say about it.
Nope, nothing to say about it.
Then on to the next one, which gets me really excited. I have a friend who's going to be really into this game. It's called Back for Blood, and it uses the 4 instead of the word for, because believe it or not, made by the same people who made Left 4 Dead. This is basically a squad-based zombie killing shooter. Another one I think is going to be great for streamers, great for gaming communities, great to just hop in with some friends and have some fun. Have you ever played Left 4 Dead?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Because I mean, I know some people don't really like it, but the gameplay is like, it's chef's kiss. It's very good. It gets everybody working together and communicating, and if you don't, you fail. So it's just super good for building party gameplay. And I'm thinking this one's going to be more of that, more goodness. I mean, they've got the
Absolutely.
backing of Microsoft now. Before they
Yeah.
were doing it a little bit on their own, but this is essentially a sequel. They've got more money, they've got more time, they've probably got more talent. So this is going to be an exciting one to watch too.
Absolutely. A
And
lot of zombie killing fun, hop in, grab a beer with your friends or a
yeah,
joint or whatever and play some games. I mean, it requires some coordination and some skill, but it's just some zombie killing, slaying fun for late nights when you don't want to get into anything too meaty like Star Citizen.
mm-hmm.
And,
Does
seems like
that
it'll be pretty fun.
look like something you think you'd pick up?
Absolutely. Oh, 100%.
Cool, good, because I think we're going to be playing that here in the garden. I think we're going to be playing quite a few of these games here in the garden. I was. This is another thought. A little off topic, but I was having earlier today, and I realized because gaming communities like this are becoming so popular, I can totally see the strategy that these games are using in making their games free, but monetizing them in different ways. That way, if half of a gaming community really wants to play a game, the other half doesn't have to go out and spend money to do it. They can all just jump into the same thing. That's a big deal. That's going to be huge for we keep bringing it up, but in the next episode, Halo, we talk about, and that's going to be a big part of their strategy. But we won't get too ahead of ourselves. We've got Hades, and you said that didn't really interest you, right?
Um, Actually, out of all the ones we've talked about so far, this is one that I don't even remember seeing the
Oh,
feel
right.
of. So
This was one I remember. I remember you saying that this is something you didn't really find that interesting, but it was the best. It was considered one of the best games to come out in 2020, and
Mhm.
I didn't know that. This is the first time I've heard about it, and it makes me feel kind of disconnected from the industry, which is part of why I made this podcast so that I could start to keep my finger more on the pulse of what's going on in gaming. And I'm sad that something like this just kind of flew under my radar. It looks really high quality. It's kind of a top down slash kind of isometric adventure game, it looks like. A dungeon crawler, maybe. And the gameplay looks really solid. If I had to pick a game that I thought it looked like, I would say Beautiful Joe. For anybody who used to play that game, not necessarily in the gameplay, but mostly the animations, the art style, that kind of stuff. I thought it looked cool. I don't know if I'm gonna buy it per se, but I think it's on Game Pass, so I'll probably check it out at some point.
I would say also kind of off topic. This is definitely not a gaming podcast, but a sci-fi game podcast. So a lot of these games that were announced at E3, I know you and I just we don't really pay too much attention to because if it's not sci-fi oriented, 9, 8, maybe 8 times out of 10, probably not something we're gonna really get into talking about too much, just because not really in our powerhouse. You know, you and I definitely have a lot of overlap when it comes to sci-fi, and we
Hmm.
have some of our areas of expertise outside, me with Elder Scrolls, you with some other games too. But yeah, I guess I was watching E3 within the scope of, okay, is it sci-fi? Oh, it's
Mm.
not. I'm gonna go do something else.
I
So
I think I think I've grown to accept a higher diversity. I guess I actually
mhm,
became more focused on sci-fi lately. So my
mhm,
history actually lies outside of the genre, and I tend to be more interested in a lot of other games. But it is
mhm,
something that, yes, it's something I focus on more specifically. That being said, I do want to continue to cover general gaming here.
mhm.
But this has been, I think, a fairly long. Well, we're coming up on about an hour, so I'll go ahead and
Mhm.
say that we're going to end the first part here. And then anybody who is watching or listening, go ahead and just hop on over to the second part. It's going to be a lot of really good conversation over there. We're talking about, I would say, honestly, the more exciting half of the conversation. But we're gonna go right into it right now. But for anybody else who maybe can't make it, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast. Leave a review. Leave a comment. Let us know what you liked and didn't like, what you want to hear, and what games you're excited for. What did you think of E3? Was there any game that stood out to you specifically? Love to hear it. And we will see you in the next one.